Coming to you from the Central City Radio podcast studios, it's Unfiltered Reality with your host, Alex Stovall.
Unfiltered perspective, people. That's why we call it the Unfiltered Reality.
It's about to get real.
Alrighty, we are back on Unfiltered Reality. I am the White Sheep, aka your host, Alex Stovall, and I am super excited, as usual, to bring in a very special guest who has quite the background in politics. And we're going to do things as we normally do them, but not really. Just kind of give a brief update to what we're doing in the community, and we will ask our guest to introduce themselves and kind of check in on them and see what they've been up to, and then kind of go in from there. So this week, as usual, has been quite interesting. I have met yet again hundreds of people in the community that seem to have the same common concerns and issues with the elected officials. And quite frankly, they're not really sure they trust this upcoming election, let alone actually trust our Republican candidates. So I know there may be 5 of us in the Republican Party that may agree with this, but at the end of the day, we've got to stop electing the same people. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. So, with that being said, the garden is going great. Literally cannot stop it from growing. We have a elected official, one of the congressmen that are going to come check it out, which is really ironic because this isn't even his district, and he's coming to check out the garden. I couldn't get any of the people in my community that are elected to come to the garden. But I digress nevertheless. Super excited. We are thriving, and now that things have cooled down from 1,000 degrees to like 200 degrees, we should be able to harvest some bell peppers, tomatoes, and all that good stuff that we can start giving as care packages to people in the community. So super, super excited for that and the holidays. But that's pretty much what I've been up to outside of my dog and kind of just driving in the community. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest, Lavern. How are you doing today?
I am great, Alex, and how are you?
Too blessed to be stressed or oppressed. You know me, I'm ripping and running as usual. First and foremost, thank you so much for coming on. I'm sure people have been anticipating this because we advertised.
Oh, okay, great.
So yeah, what have you been up to? I know it's been a minute since we've talked, actually, politically speaking, so.
Well, still busy in my community, talking to people about what's taking place throughout the United States, and what is going on. And trying to just enlighten them so that they will actually know, because, it's still so many people that are totally unaware as to what is really going on out here. They still believe in the fake news media, and some of them just, don't research. They just believe what it is that they hear.
Right.
And so that's something about what I've been doing.
Have you found it challenging to kind of inform people in the community that maybe aren't black or Hispanic about Black America, Hispanic America, and the challenges that we're currently facing? I know it's really easy to say that, quote-unquote, we're going to make America great, but I'm not really sure I've seen many of the candidates in Florida or in Arizona actually in the communities and the places they should be. Because at the end of the day, it's about flipping votes as far as I'm concerned, right?
Yes. That's true. I think America is already great. I think America already was great. I mean, when you think in terms of this country, how many countries is it that you could go to and actually, express how your opinions, express how you feel about things without getting stoned, without getting beaten. We see how countries in today's world where women have absolutely no rights, no freedom of speech. Some cannot drive. Some do not have the privilege of being able to seek an education, and so on and so on. So far as I'm concerned, America already is great. It it is a wonderful country to be in because we have, so many opportunities here in this country and if we apply ourselves to do whatever it is we would like to do with our life, and we can do it here.
Have you, so you're still actively in politics in your community, right? I don't know if we mentioned that.
Yes, I am.
So why do you think the narrative about making America great again is being so heavily, or if you will, aggressively being pushed? I know America has its challenges, but for the most part, we're doing a lot better than the rest of the world. Outside of inflation, and that comes from poor elections, that comes from uneducated voters putting people in office. They're picking their favorites rather than people that are actually going to do the job. I don't know any job that I've ever worked where I didn't like somebody, at least one person that I didn't really care for. But that person typically does their job, they're on time, they do the right thing. So at the end of the day, it's about the people that are going to do the job, not necessarily electing or selecting people that we like that make us feel good, right?
Yeah, that is so true. I mean, so far as myself, I guess I've been truly blessed because I've been self-employed for like over 30 years.
Oh, wow.
So once again, here in this country, we have so many opportunities that are available to us. So I don't understand when people use the term or when they say that they feel oppressed here in America. I don't understand that part.
Yeah, and from the sentiment that I'm getting in the community, Democrat, Republican, progressive, I talk to everybody in the community, it seems to me that people are quite frankly sick of seeing the fighting. I keep hearing okay, so let me premise this. I've been in politics a little over 10 days now, and I've learned that words mean things, and the vernacular that a politician uses tells you a lot about that individual. So without that being said, I've currently heard multiple politicians use the magic word sponsor. As far as I'm concerned, when a politician says, I sponsored a bill, that means that they didn't actually draft the bill, they got behind the bill, which leads me to believe more so that they're not actually doing their job. Because if you're sponsoring multiple bills, that typically means you're not drafting and legislating policy specifically for your district. That is why they're elected. I could be wrong, but correct me on that.
I agree. That's why it's so important that people think and do their due diligence when it comes to electing officials, because some people that get elected, they go in for their own self-serving agenda. And when you have people that are elected and they have their own self-interest at heart, and that's their main concern, then the community will continue to suffer. So people need to, once again, do their due diligence. Think about who it is that you are getting ready to vote for, that you are getting ready to elect. What is their relationship with the community? Are they currently doing anything in the community at all? Because, once again, when these people go into office, are they going to be fighting for you and the community? Are they going to be in there fighting for themselves, their friends, their friends in their circle?
Yeah, it's something else I've noticed that's been really interesting to me. I always use interesting in politics. It means something else, but interesting nevertheless is the word I'm going to use. We have had a lot, and I say a lot, of text messages that have been flowing in to people in my neighborhood. Matter of fact, had a guy by the name of Jim message me. He sent me a text message that said the golden ticket. So I'm going to go ahead and address the elephant in the room because clearly it's not being addressed. Racism. Currently in my district, we have a lot of Republicans, specifically white Republicans, that are attacking one of the candidates on the Democratic Party side accusing them of being racist. Now, with that being said, that's not to say I agree or disagree with that, but what I will say is I've experienced more prejudice, more racism in the Republican Party than I have in the Democratic Party. And another thing I've noticed, specifically in my state, I can't speak for every state, but what I have noticed is when you tell somebody that the party has specifically elected officials that are bigots or racist toward black candidates, they look at you in disbelief and they think that you're a traitor and that you're a race baiter and X, Y, and Z. But I find it really ironic that we have billboards in our communities right now. We're supposed to be against racism when in fact we're using reverse racism. We're attacking the candidate saying that she did X, Y, and Z and she doesn't like black people. But Arizona is predominantly 57% white, Caucasian. We had 4, maybe 5 black candidates. Not a single black candidate got elected from the primaries. They call it the Super 10 or Top 10 or whatever their little ballot pamphlet is that they're handing out. Every single person on there is an old white person. Not to say that I have an issue with that, but I have an issue with that. Because if we're truly supposed to represent the majority and the minority in our communities as elected officials, if everybody that's in office is white, how can we honestly tell people in the community that we have their best interests at heart when we refuse to elect Hispanics and blacks in the community that want to get active and involved to improve the community, specifically the communities that they come from? Because I am yet to see any of the white candidates or the white officials that are currently seated in office go knock doors on the projects or knock doors on west side of Phoenix or any place like that. My suspicion is that they're afraid, and maybe also they don't know how to approach us. So there are a lot of people I've drove in my vehicle that have kind of expressed this concern to me, Republican and Democrat voters, by the way. How would you address that to people that are having this conflicting issue? Because a lot of people are getting reluctant to vote, which is totally not what we want. Because if we don't vote, that's actually more harmful to the country, more harmful to our districts.
What I would say about that, you're right. You're right. I mean, we are sitting there right here in Florida. Florida, a lot of black candidates that ran for this election cycle. And right now we have 2 black candidates that are left for this election cycle. And it's kind of heartbreaking in a sense, because, Alex, when you run, you're giving it your all. You're putting yourself out there you're speaking and you're fighting for what you feel, and you're letting people know what you stand for, and also not even to mention all the hate mail that you get when you're running on the platform as a Republican candidate in itself. All the Uncle Toms, the Auntie Toms, the coons in the house, and so it's really heartbreaking because once again, where's the support for the black candidate? Where is that support for the black candidate?
It's interesting. I've been waiting to actually hear somebody that is in the political realm to speak on this, but it's almost as if the black-ish candidates that have made it through the primary have forgot where they came from. And like I said before we began this podcast, I say the quiet part out loud, and I make sure people know. I talked to another guy that said, hey man, I'll never know what it's like to be black, let alone be a black Republican. I couldn't imagine. And I'm like, I appreciate that. It's got its ups and downs, it does. But at the end of the day, my color shouldn't necessarily matter. My color isn't necessarily what's gotten me to be a conservative. It's my mindset. It's my policies. It's what I believe in. So it's really interesting to see that they'll tell you They're not prejudiced, they're not racist, they're not you fill in the blank, but they have these gatherings where it's, mind you, the same Republicans every single meeting, which tells me what? We're not growing, and if you're not growing, you're dying. If we have the same people coming to these meetings every single month for the last 4, 5, 10, 12, 20 years, something's wrong. Something is significantly wrong. And the fact that people just turn a blind eye and act like it's not wrong is really concerning. I mean, I've had people at LD meetings, at CPAC, at all these quote-unquote conservative movements come to me and say, we need more people like you. And what exactly is more people like me or you, Lavern? I'm still trying to figure out if someone can articulate that for me.
I can articulate it very well in my case. I just happen to be a very outspoken candidate. And I don't have no problems calling a spade. I don't have no problems talking about anything that is political. Now, what I also saw for this cycle was that a lot of candidates that were considered to be the American First candidates that were very outspoken. They put all their cards on the table, and they were very transparent about their campaign and about what they stood for, and they were on all social media platforms with it. Those were the ones that lost. But for the ones that were afraid to speak their piece, they were afraid to say this or afraid to say that, those are the ones, a lot of those are the ones that are still running right now. So what that says to me is that obviously they don't want people like us, people that are not afraid. They don't want us, in office because the support isn't there.
My favorite one that I hear every time I go to an LD or Republican meeting is, "You speak so well. You speak so well." And my response to that is, thank you. How did you expect me to speak? They never give me a response to that. So, being a Republican, working the Trump victory campaign, knocking doors, not to mention I wasn't paid for 2 months, but you won't hear that broadcasted on the news. Thank you, Kelly Ward and her team. But, it is what it is. People are going to be people. Yes, I do have text messages. Yes, I do have screenshots of the correspondence from them not paying me while I was working the Trump victory campaign. Doesn't really look good because I was the only black guy working that campaign specifically in my area that wasn't getting paid. So, as I've said before, the proof is in the pudding. I'm not saying Republican voters are racist, but I am going to say there are a lot of people that are elected that have a little, like a hint of bigotry. I'm convinced. Because the way they look at me, the way they talk to me, the way they talk about the black community. I mean, I can give you countless examples of things that they said that were just completely hateful, first off. I mean, you had Blake Masters go on national television and say black people were the reason for crime. But he's an America First candidate? No, he's for a certain kind of America. He's for a certain kind of American. But you don't blame one specific race for crime. In actuality, crime is crime across the board. Bad people are in all ethnic backgrounds, all shapes and sizes. So for him to get on stage and make that comment, that told me everything I needed to know about that guy. Concerning. But we're not talking about the real issues in our state. I don't know if your state is. We're running out of water here. People in our community are really suffering. But they give the generic, inflation is high, people can't pay their rent, X, Y, and Z. But the reality is the politicians aren't experiencing this because they're not in their communities anymore. I have not seen one politician in the community. Neither has anybody else. People are starting to catch on. Correct me if I'm wrong, But the only time we see some of these politicians, the only time we see some of these incumbents is at big donor meetings, at LD meetings when they're being asked to show up somewhere so they can take their little pictures, or election time when people have to show up for the polls. It's almost as if they think the average voter is stupid. That's the impression I'm getting. And I think that's the impression a lot of people in the community are starting to get. And quite frankly, they're sick of it. But that's just my state. That's just my district, CD5. Have you experienced any of this? Or are people kind of throwing their hands up with the whole let's vote for the Republican that is the one that the quote-unquote party picks without actually being able to vet the candidates themselves?
That's a kind of interesting question. That is very interesting. Well, first of all, on my end, people are just in survival mode. And what I mean by that is that, gas is at an all-time high. Food is at an all-time high. And everything else. So people are trying to take care of their kids. They're trying to put food on the table and everything else. So when they're experiencing that, and sometimes they have the tendency to say, hey, what difference is my vote going to make? What difference is my vote going to make? Because I'm already struggling. The ones that are already elected, that I email, that I call, that I go and speak with in their office, and a lot of times they're going and it's no help there. So what is the point? What is the point?
I've heard a lot of people in my community specifically tell me they don't know their representatives. Half of them can't tell me who the representative is, and it's not because they don't want to know. It's truly because we are so busy as Americans. By default, it's the politicians' fault. They're supposed to make our lives easier, not so busy that we can't actually pay attention to what's going on. And unfortunately, that's basically the position they've put most voters in. They only get to see one ballot. They don't know if they want to vote for that candidate or not. They see what the party wants them to see. But they don't have time because, like you said, they're so busy with this inflation that's crushing everybody. They don't actually get a chance to go to an LD meeting, nor do they really advertise it anywhere. Because it's, like I said, it's the exact same people going in these meetings. So how do we fix that? If you could change that, I would say, how would you say elected officials could be more involved with their communities? I get it. They give you the runaround that they're quote-unquote busy, but, for the most part, a lot of that's just BS. Because I've been around them. You've been around them. They're busy trying to be busy. That's my perception.
I agree, and that's why it's so important for people to be active and seek out the information so they would know, where these meetings are and where they're taking place at and what is on the agenda. You need to know what is on the agenda. You need to know what's taking place in your city or your county or on the state level or on the federal level, because all of this is affecting you, your families, your household, and when you're not there, then you can't fight. And it's so important that you fight. For case in point, right now, the Democratic Party is pushing that agenda for the drag queens because they want them in each classroom. And they don't need to be in nobody's classroom. They need to be wherever they are at. So if you don't come out and fight, then guess what? When you just happen to show up in your kid's classroom and all of a sudden you have this man there in a dress with makeup on and these long butterfly-looking eyelashes, then it's because you did not show up to fight against it. So once again, Find out what is on the agenda. Attend those school board meetings in your district and in your municipality, because that is so important. If you go down and fight, it's power in numbers, and you can stop a lot of the foolishness that's taking place with these narratives and these agendas and everything else that they are pushing that is so ungodly. It is time out for it.
I couldn't agree more. So we're going to kind of leave it from there, but everybody that's listening needs to understand something. This is not a dig at all of our elected officials. It's a dig at probably like 98% of them, but I digress. That's besides the point. It's to say that we need to start holding one another accountable. We can improve our communities if we're asleep at the wheel. I know everybody's busy. Lavern knows everybody is busy, but at some point you have to make time, because the next generation is the one that's going to suffer with this inflation, with this war, this nuclear war that we have going on potentially. So, Lavern, how can people follow you and kind of just check out your progress about your campaign and just some of the stuff you're doing in the community?
Oh, okay. You can follow me on Twitter, because that's my main social media platform that I'm on. That's at Lavern Spicer. And also, you can check out my program, which is curlyhousefoodbank.org. And also, I have a PAC that's called The Right Hook. And what I'm doing, I'm supporting candidates, because, once again, Alex, as you know, we can't just depend on others to back our candidates. We need to help the candidates raise money so that they can get out there in the mainstream and we can get the right ones in office. So once again, that's the Red Hook PAC, and you can donate to my PAC also.
Perfect. And you guys know how to follow us. It's Unfiltered.
Oh, let me correct that. That's the Right Hook PAC. The
Right Hook. PAC. Right Hook. Got it. That's the Right Hook PAC.
The Right Hook.
Right
yes,
Hook
Right
PAC,
Hook
ladies
PAC.
and gentlemen. And Unfiltered Reality podcast is on Apple Podcasts, it's on Spotify, and it is on YouTube. Alex for Arizona is how you guys can get in touch with me. Once again, Ms. Spicer, we thank you so much for attending and giving your perspective, and hopefully we look forward to having you back on real soon here.
Okay, Alex, thank you so much for having me on your show today.
No problem. You guys be blessed. God bless America.